wonderful time we had in Italy. One of the most beautiful places on earth that I've ever seen and ever experienced. The food, the wine, the scenery, the people, every bit of it was just phenomenal. After talking with the culinary students from the trip itself, they were absolutely blown away. They never expected in their lifetime to see what they saw and to taste what they tasted and to actually experience the different things that they saw. All the different things as far as the markets that they went to and the food that they ate, the demonstrations that they got to witness, not to mention the beautiful scenery. I think it's probably life-changing for all of them, and I think they're going to really take a lot out from that trip, and they're going to help. It's going to help them in the long run with their culinary careers. Our first trip was actually in the city called Cuneo, which was a beautiful little city. They had a wonderful market, had a huge square that was just taken over by all these different vendors, and I was just absolutely amazed at how much fresh produce they had and the different types of produce that they had. Not to mention some of the beautiful seafood that they had brought in. There was sardines, all kinds of sardines from all throughout different parts of the waters of Italy. But then they had fresh meats and beautiful hams and lots of smoked products, and charcuterie items is actually what they're called, which is something we actually teach in the program here, and it's good for the students that had a chance to see that.
One of my favorite experiences was when we were in Cuneo, walked through the farmer's market and look at all the different vegetables and the selling live chickens and the different kinds of meats they had.
The wine bank. Oh, I have to be honest, that was probably my highlight of the trip. My passion for wine and what I learned about wine really came into play and helped me a lot, but I learned so much by being there, and to actually see the wine bank and talk to Felix, who was our guest speaker that day. I learned so much from him. There's a lot of things I didn't know about Italian wines, as far as some of the jurisdictions and some of the laws and things that they have. But then to actually go down into the cellar at the wine bank, to see the wine that was down there and to see the quantity of wine that was stored in that bank was absolutely mesmerizing. It was one of the neatest things I have ever seen. I loved the room that was locked up, the private room that had the wine in it. There had to be, I would estimate, I don't know how many bottles were in there, but there was millions of dollars worth of wine just in that room itself. And that's why they call it the wine bank, I guess. But that was awesome. I had a great time there, and it was very nice of them to give us some wine tasting along with some appetizers with the wine. Perfect complement to one another. It was really good. And I think the students really got a kick out of that because they loved seeing it and they really enjoyed listening to Felix, who was our speaker.
I wanted to get a sweet red wine for my grandma, and he just pointed me right to that section and said, this is the top one, these are some okay ones, and of course I had to get the top one.
When we first got to the farm at La Batera and had a chance to meet Mario, he didn't speak English, which wasn't really an issue because we had a translator. But boy, you could see the passion in that man's eyes, and you could hear it in his voice when he was talking about how he prepares his cheeses. And the cheeses that he makes were spectacular. And we got to taste some of the cheeses while we were there. And it was neat because when we first got there, we got to watch some of the women that were working in the kitchen at the time, putting the cheeses together and packaging them up and getting them ready to be shipped. And I thought that was neat. So then we actually went out into the farm where we actually saw some of the livestock. It was neat to see the pigs that they were raising. And I think a lot of the students really enjoyed seeing the little baby pigs running around, and there was a lot of them. It touched my culinary heart because they did everything from right there, from the soil. Everything that they were doing was from that farm. And I didn't think the trip could get any better at that point. And then we sat down for what I thought was just going to be lunch. And it ended up being one of the finest dining experiences of my entire life. I think we were eating for about 2 hours. And I believe there was 8 courses that we had. And every single thing that they brought was spectacular. And the wine that they served with each course was it was a perfect match, perfect pairing. And I know the students enjoyed that because you can see it in their eyes. I was just looking at the students and thinking, this has got to be one of the coolest things they've ever done.
My favorite part of the whole entire trip would have to be when I visited Mario's farm, which was La Patera, and I love that he showed us the farm and everything, and then how we went from the farm to a restaurant, and then we ate and had a 6 or 7 course meal. It was so interesting learning about that.
One of the nice things that we did, we actually visited a butcher shop at the top of this hill, which seemed like it was the top of a mountain. It was one of the most beautiful views that we had of the entire trip. You walk into this little tiny butcher shop, and it's located on a street that has just one shop after another, little cafes and that. And you wouldn't think much about it, but we had an actual tour of the butcher shop, and when you walk through the back, you're standing out on this beautiful veranda, and you're overlooking one of the most spectacular sights I've ever seen. But the tour itself of the butcher shop was really neat because we had a chance to meet the butcher, an Italian butcher who did speak a little bit of English, and his family has been running the butcher shop for many years. And he's taken it over since his grandfather started it. And the work that he did inside that butcher shop, the sausages and the salamis and the things that they were making there, not to mention they had poultry and cheeses and other things, were excellent. We had a chance to sample some of the things, and a lot of students bought some of the product and brought it back with them to the hotels, and we enjoyed that with some wine and stuff. And it was an excellent trip, very educational, and I think the students loved it. That was one of their highlights for sure. When we visited the Parma ham factory, I didn't know exactly what to expect. I knew a lot about prosciutto, which is the type of ham that they were making, but I didn't realize that they were one of the exclusive makers of that style of ham. And in order for it to fall under the category of a true Parma ham, it had to come from that factory. That was one of the neat things we learned. The young lady that gave us the tour, very knowledgeable, spoke very good English, and she was great. But I was just absolutely fascinated by the way that they prepare the hams, and they have to age for certain periods of time. So they had different refrigerators that were all working at different temperatures, and every one of them was just packed full of these hams hanging on these racks and that. And it was neat because the hams would spend like 6 months in one refrigerator, then they'd be transferred to another refrigerator where the humidity might be a little bit different, or the temperature could be just slightly different. And they age for another 6 months there, and then they do the same thing in another cool. And then finally, when they get to the point where they're ready to sell, they're ready for market, they age in this final cooler. And they had a branding iron, and they would brand the ham, Parma Ham Company, and it'd be ready to get sold in the market. And I've had Parma ham, and of course we had it when we were there, and it's just the best prosciutto in the world. There's no doubt about it. Nothing compares.
I liked learning about how they salted the ham and processed the ham, and was shocked at how long it actually stays there, in their factory until it goes to market.
One of the really nice educational things that we did was the culinary students had a chance to see an olive oil. It wasn't a demonstration, it was more of a tasting, but the gentleman that put it on for us at the restaurant put a nice little PowerPoint presentation together. We got to taste a couple of different types of olive oil. One type of olive oil that really wasn't fresh, as opposed to a very nice fresh one. And I learned a lot. I mean, I really learned how to really identify good olive oil from not so good olive oil. And there is a huge difference. And I think the students really enjoyed that.
One of the things I found very interesting was the olive oil. I had no idea how to purchase olive oil, what it should taste like. I always kind of thought it should smell like olives, and that's not correct. When you buy olive oil, it should be very green, and you should buy olive oil under 2 years old. So it's not like it gets better with age. The younger the olives are, the better your olive oil is.
So we had a wonderful, beautiful bus ride through the mountains of Tuscany. It was just breathtaking. The students couldn't stop taking photographs just on the bus. And we finally get to this winery up on the top of this hill, and it was called the Salcedo Winery. And I remember getting off the bus, and this is no exaggeration, I remember kissing the ground because I thought it was one of the most beautiful places I'd ever stood on earth. The view, and then at the winery, it was just gorgeous. We had a phenomenal tour from a young lady who was real knowledgeable, and we had an opportunity to go downstairs into the cellar and saw the massive oak casks and then the massive stainless casks that they had, all the wine that was being processed at the time or being stored prior to bottling. And what an opportunity for the students to see something like that. That's just something you don't see every day. And it ties in great with our wine class that we're teaching here on campus, because we talk about a lot of those things when we're in class, and a lot of it's just theory, but for them to actually see it, I thought was awesome. And then, again, I don't know how that could get any better, but it did. So we went upstairs then and had a phenomenal lunch and they prepared for us. But the food was excellent. The people were just terrific, really good hosts, and I think almost every single student bought at least one bottle of wine from that winery because it was that good. And we tasted it. I believe we tasted 5 different wines with lunch, which made it just awesome. What a great trip.
My favorite places was the Salcedo Winery, where it was like a new age winery. They used like sunlight to light up the rooms where all the wine was held. It was like little tubes that had reflective mirrors that brought the sunlight in, and that was their only source of light. On the outside, they had plants growing on the walls to try to keep it cool. It was just a really cool place.
We went to the city of Bologna, which was a beautiful city. We dined in this restaurant. It was really nice. The gentleman that owned the restaurant kind of greeted us at first, and then we went in for a demonstration inside of his, it was actually inside of one of his dining areas inside the restaurant. And this adorable little 77-year-old woman was doing our pasta demonstration. And I'm thinking, boy, I don't know how good this is going to be. And when she started working and she started rolling out pasta, well, she actually started out by making pasta by hand. She actually started by putting flour on the bench and cracking eggs right into the flour, and she mixed it all up, and she made the dough itself. And then she started rolling it out, and she didn't use a rolling machine of any kind. Didn't even use a rolling pin. She used this. It was called a matelot, and it was like a wooden baseball bat, but it was straight all the way across. And she rolled all the pasta by hand until she got it to the thickness that she wanted it. Then from there, she would either cut it using this really cool knife, and she cut very thin pieces of pasta, and sometimes a little bit wider pasta. But then she was also hand making tortellini. She was hand making raviolis, and I was just absolutely amazed at how good she was. She was a genius with her hands. I think the students got a kick out of it because she was so talented, this woman, and she makes all the pasta for that restaurant, and that restaurant does amazing volume. What an awesome lunch experience we had there too. So we got to see the pasta demonstration by this wonderful little Italian woman, and then the food was just terrific. It was a great way to kind of end our trip because it was one of the last days.
The lady making the pasta, she just seemed like so enthused about it. You could tell she really loved her job. She tossed up pasta like she was making the penne, and not the penne, the linguine, and you would cut it, and she would just like do this. And her smiles, it was awesome.
We had free time. The students could kind of go and eat at restaurants that they wanted to eat at, and we left it up to them. You know, some of them went in groups, some of them came with us as the tour guides, but that was a really nice experience because we got to eat at restaurants that were recommended. You know, we had talked to some of the people and said, you know, which restaurant might you recommend in this little city? And, great dining experiences.
Other things that really blew me away there was everywhere we went, Parma Ham, the winery, the restaurants, even to Mario's house, everyone is just so passionate about their job. I come back home and, you know, you don't want to go to work. You're dreading your job. But everyone there, they're so passionate. They love it. They know all about it, and they want you involved. And when they saw that we were learning, it made them happy.
One night we were walking around and we heard music, and the group that I was with, we went and there was a live band playing, and it was in Florence. And to be 20 years old and say like that I did that, it's just, and then seeing a band playing, that's their passion, and we all went there because we're passionate people, want to learn about culinary, and it's like everyone's so like alive there.
They just had an opportunity to taste good food and taste good wine, and that was what this trip was all about.